Hello, dear students. I welcome you all on behalf of Sri Jayendra Rank Zone classes. Dear student, we are going to start today a new chapter of class 11, that is respiration in plant. As you know, dear student, the previous chapter in class 11, that is previous to the respiration, is a chapter photosynthesis. And as we know, photosynthesis is the process where you study the fixation of CO2 and the synthesis of glucose. But if we talk about the respiration, here that glucose which is already synthesized in the photosynthesis, that is going to be used, that is going to be broken up, and it is going to release the energy, and that energy is going to be used in the several processes. Okay, so this way this is going to happen. So here we are going to study, here we are going to study the respiration in plant. Now if we talk about introduction, we know that all living organisms need energy for carrying out their daily activities. That can be absorption of the food or nutrients, then their transport to the different plant organs or different organs, then movement, reproduction, or even a breathing. For all these activities, if we focus, there is a need of energy. So where does all this energy come from? The question is, from where this energy comes? Then the answer is, all this energy comes from the oxidation of food, and this oxidation of food can be defined as a respiration. Now, how this energy is utilized? So the energy which is released by the breakdown of a glucose or the food, that is going to stored in the form of ATP, and that ATP further gives energy to the system. Do all food give the same amount of energy? Then we can say no, the amount of energy differ according to the food that is going to be used. Then the question is, one more question is, where do plants get this energy from? Then obviously through the respiration, these plants are getting energy. By the oxidation of food, they are getting the energy. And the next question, that is, do plants it? Then obviously you know that the answer is no, because plants synthesize their own food. They do not synthesize, they do not depend on the other organism, or they do not eat food. So all the energy required for the life processes is obtained by oxidation of some macromolecule that we call a food. Whatever the macromolecules are there, whatever the macromolecules that we are going to eat, which is the food that we are going to eat, that is going to be oxidized to gain the energy. Only green plants and cyanobacteria can prepare their own food by the photosynthesis. Cyanobacteria, blue-green algae, and the green plants has the ability to synthesize their own food. They trap light energy. What do they do? They trap the light energy, convert it into chemical energy, and that is stored in the form of a carbohydrate or in the bonds of a carbohydrate. Like glucose, sucrose and starch are also the food storing component. As they say, the food is synthesized in the glucose, then it is converted into sucrose and ultimately into the starch, and food is stored in the form of starch. Not all cells prepare food. Only cells containing chloroplast prepare food. That is also one of the important things that you should remember, that chloroplasts are going to synthesize their food. Only green plants and cyanobacteria prepare their food by the process called a photosynthesis. Okay, and other all organisms depend on the plants specifically. What does green plants or do? Though, so we know that in green plants, green leaves are the main photosynthetic organ. So the green leaves accept CO2, that is carbon dioxide, and synthesize glucose by using the water and releasing the air. And to carry out this conversion of CO2 fixation and synthesis of this and release of oxygen sunlight is necessary. And obviously, this whole process is carried out by the chloroplast which is present in them. And we know that chloroplasts look like this. Okay, so ultimately we are going to obtain a what? Sugar from this. So animals obtain their food from the plants directly, that is a herbivores, means they are dependent on the plant, then they can be directly dependent on the plant, they can be herbivore, okay, or we can say that they are insectivores, herbivores, or they can be carnivores. They are dependent on the food indirectly. So animals obtain food directly or indirectly. Directly, that is herbivores, and the indirectly through herbivores, the organisms which are dependent on the herbivores, they are known as carnivores. So this is the food chain which is going to be take place, and food chain happens because the energy flow occur in such a way due to the transfer of energy and the synthesis of food and utilization of food. Saprophytes like fungi, the fungi depend on the dead and organic matter. They are also heterotrophs. Okay, so this is the mushroom, which is a one type of fungus which is acting as saprophyte. What is important that ultimately all the food that is required for life process comes from the photosynthesis. So what is the important thing? Ultimately, all the food that is required, they are coming from the photosynthesis because this chapter leads with the cellular respiration and the food which we are getting in the cellular respiration coming from the plant. Because of this, we are mainly dependent on this. So cellular respiration or the mechanism of breakdown of food material within the cell and to release the energy and the trapping of this energy in the synthesis of food, that is cellular respiration. So what is going to happen in the cellular respiration? There is a breakdown of food going to take place, and with the breakdown of food material within the cell, the energy is going to be released, and that is ultimately used in the synthesis of trapping of this energy for the synthesis of food. Okay, so that is the particular thing. Now, photosynthesis, of course, takes place within the chloroplast in the eukaryotes or specifically plants, whereas the breakdown of complex molecules to yield energy takes place in the cytoplasm and in the mitochondria also only in eukaryote. Means we can say that photosynthesis occur in the chloroplast and the for the breakdown of food or for the respiration, cytoplasm and mitochondria are needed in case of eukaryote. So whatever the glucose we have, which we have obtained through the photosynthesis, the breaking of carbon-carbon bond takes place in this, and the breakdown of carbon-carbon bonds of a complex compound through the oxidation within the cell that lead to the release of considerable amount of energy, and that is called a what? A respiration. So in respiration, carbon-carbon bond are going to be broken up. The compounds that are oxidized during this process are known as respiratory substrate. Whatever the compounds that are going to be oxidized here, they are known as respiratory substrates. Some of the important respiratory substrates which yield energy in respiration are carbohydrates. Whatever the majority, the common respiratory substrates are going to be used, that is a carbohydrate. And carbohydrate, the principal respiratory source, or main respiratory source is the carbohydrate. Then after this, the another respiratory substrate are the protein that also act as a respiratory substrate. We can get energy from proteins also. And fat are also that, from that also we can get energy. Organic acids can be used as a substrate. And here carbohydrates are oxidized to release the energy, but protein, fat, organic acids are can be used as a respiratory substrate in some plants. So majority or commonly glucose is going to be used, the carbohydrate is going to be used. But in absence of carbohydrates, fat, protein, organic acid can be used as a respiratory substance to get the energy. And based on this, the respiratory substance which is going to be used, the respiration is of two types. So here, the respiration is of two types. Okay, we can say that two type of respiration. Talk. then this respiration of two type, that is, so this respiration is of two type, that is floating respiration, and another one is the protoplasmic respiration. When floating respiration takes place, the respiratory substrates are, in floating respiration, if we talk, the respiratory substrate are carbohydrates or fats. So whenever in the body the carbohydrate is getting used or getting oxidized and the fat are going to be oxidized, at that time we can say that the floating respiration is going on. But when within a cell, you will see that when carbohydrate get over, the fat are going to be used. But when fat become over within a cell, the proteins are going to be used. So here, the respiratory substrate are proteins. So proteins are going to be a respiratory substrate here. Okay. So this is the two type of respiration based on respiratory substrate oxidized. Okay. So that is the what we can say the respiration. Now, energy released by the oxidation of a respiratory substrate in a respiration is not used directly, but it is used in the synthesis of ATP, and that ATP gives ultimately energy to us. So ATP is broken down further whenever energy needs to be utilized. So ATP here act as an energy currency of cell. Actually, first the oxidation of glucose will occur, oxidation of respiratory substrate will occur, respiration will occur, energy will be released, that energy is stored in ATP, and that ATP will be further broken to give energy when there is a need in the cell. So here you can see the ATP is getting broken up, ATP hydrolysis is taking place, and energy is getting released during the conversion of ATP into the ADP, that is adenosine diphosphate and the inorganic phosphate. Okay, so this is the thing. Now let's talk further. So now the question is, do plants breathe? The question is, do plants breathe? So this is the thing. Now the question is, do plants breathe? Actually, we have to first, we are going to talk about respiration mainly, but we have to understand breathing also. So the question is, do plants breathe? So the answer is yes. Plants obviously require oxygen for respiration, and for that they breathe obviously. They also give out carbon dioxide and they take intake of oxygen. But in plants, it is not like animals. Plants do not have a specialized organ like animal for the gaseous exchange, but they have a stomata and lenticels for this purpose of the exchange of gases. So animals have a lungs, they have a respiratory organ, but plants have a lenticels and the stomata. Plants do exchange through this. Now, there are several reasons why plants can get along without a respiratory organ. There is a question why the plants can get with or survive without the respiratory organ. Then the answer is that each plant part take care of its own gas exchange needs. When we talk about the plants, in plants, each plant part is going to take care of its own gas exchange. And plants do not present great demand for gas exchange. Plants are not going to demand or present a great demand for the gas exchange. Now here, roots are there, stems are there, leaves are there. They respire at a rate far lower than animals. Okay, so they respire at a far lower than the animals, and they take care of their own organs, and such a way the respiration keeps on going. So only during photosynthesis, a large volume of gases are exchanged, and each leaf is well adapted to take care of its own needs during this period. So leaf take care of their own, and large exchanges occur during this. When the cells photosynthesize, availability of oxygen is not a problem in these cells, since oxygen is released within the cell. So when cell photosynthesize, availability of oxygen is not a problem because the exchange takes place, and photosynthetic cells release oxygen itself, uses the oxygen, and the photosynthetic cell also respire and release the oxygen during that time. So the distance that gases must diffuse in the plant is even in large bulky plant is not great. That is one another reason why the plant can get breathe, can take care of their own, and how they survive. So each living cell in a plant is located quite close to the surface of the plant, and due to this is true for the leaves that, but for thick woody stem, the root gases, stem and root, the gases diffuse through the lenticels. The complete combustion of glucose, when take place, it produces CO2 and H2O, which are going to be end product, yield energy, most of which is given out as heat, and some is stored in the form of ATP. So you can see this reaction. In this reaction, you can see that C6H12O6 is there, sugar is there, glucose is there. When 6O2 are getting used to oxidize this sugar, that is going to produce a carbon dioxide and water, and ultimately energy is going to be produced. If this energy to be useful for to the cell, it should be able to utilize it to synthesize other molecules that the cell require. If this energy is to be useful to the cell, it should be able to utilize it to synthesize the other molecule that the cell requires. The strategy that the plant cell uses is to catabolize the glucose molecule in such a way that not all the liberated energy goes out as a heat. And the key is to oxidize glucose not in one step. Here, the glucose is not going to be oxidized in one step. It oxidizes in a several small steps that enable ultimately some steps to be just large enough that the energy released can be coupled with the ATP synthesis. So out in so many small steps, some small steps are larger, in which you will see that the energy which is going to be released that is coupled to the synthesis of the photosynthesis. Okay, so that is the thing happen here. Okay. During the process of respiration, you will see that oxygen is going to be utilized, CO2 and water are and energy are released as a product, and the combustion reaction require oxygen here. So what is the combustion? That is the question. So the process of burning something or a rapid chemical combination of a substrate with oxygen involving production of heat and light. So the process of burning something or a rapid chemical combinations of a substance with the oxygen involving the production of heat and light. So sudden combination, burning process takes place, rapid combination takes place, then this is known as combustion. Several organisms adapted to anaerobic conditions. Some are facultative and others are obligate anaerobic. Okay, means some are survive without oxygen at all. In the absence or in the presence of oxygen, they are going to die. That are obligate anaerobic. Some are facultative anaerobic, and facultative anaerobic they can survive in the absence of oxygen, but usually they are aerobic. And such a way the process keeps on going. So the facultative and obligate anaerobic microorganisms that can live and grow with or without molecular oxygen means usually they are aerobic, but sometimes they are anaerobic, then they are facultative one. And the obligate anaerobe, then organism that can grow only in the complete absence of molecular oxygen. In the presence of oxygen, they die. That is obligate anaerobe. So if we talk about this introductory part and talk about some of the MCQs, the energy which is required to carry out all daily life activities like particularly reproduction, absorption, transport, all this for the energy is obviously required. So the answer is going to be the three, fourth. Next, organism which can prepare their own food are obviously the organism which can prepare their own food. They are the autotrophs. Obviously, they are the autotrophs, and autotrophs are the nothing but saprophytes are a heterotrophic organism. Animal and fungi are heterotrophic. The cyanobacteria is going to be the correct answer, which is a blue-green algae, and they are the first oxygenic photosynthetic bacteria. So they prepare their own food. What is the mechanism which is involved in breaking of food material within the cell and to release the energy, and some energy is used to synthesis of ATP. So this respiration, that is obviously a cellular respiration in which a breakdown of a food takes place and ultimately energy getting released and energy is stored in the synthesis of ATP. Interconnected network of air spaces and root, stem and leaves of the plant body is because of the interconnected network of air spaces in root, stem and leaves of plant body is because of the, we can say, the loosely arranged parenchyma cells, and these loosely arranged parenchyma cells this carry out these things because they have an interconnected network. And the complete combustion of a glucose produces, the complete combustion of a glucose produces, that is going to produce a CO2 by use of oxygen and water also. So the CO2 and water, that is the fourth, is going to be the correct answer. So this is the what we can say about the initial part of this one. Now that is the introductory part about this whole respiration chapter. Now in the next chapter, next lecture, we are going to talk about the how the respiration takes place, the types of respiration, aerobic and aerobic, and the glycolysis we are going to study in the next lecture. I hope you understood well. Thank you.